Just waiting on, we're being recorded. Great. Okay. So has everybody had a chance to look at minutes? You want a moment? Does anybody have any comment or need a moment? Ready, motion to approve? Yeah, we've got a motion to approve and all in favor?
All in favor?
We have it. Okay. So, and then first up on the agenda is the water report, which I'm gathering we don't have a lot of material, but it seemed to me we had a lot of information.
Yes,
Right? Want to
unfortunately.
kind of summarize where you think we're at?
Yeah, it's got to be a very quick summary because I have forgotten to, I have all these copies of other documents, but I didn't bring that one.
Okay.
The big four wells, the deeper wells are declining. The Goat Hill lost about a foot and a half in the month of October. So even at that, they're pretty close to the median value for that month. And presumably that has continued with the lack of rainfall that we've had. The shallower wells they've dropped as well. Again, because I forgot to bring the paper, I don't have where they fit into the median for October. I think it was lower, but right now, I guess with the potential for rain coming shortly, we could modify the level or not. I apologize for not having that information with me.
Okay, well, so Ken had given us a report on rainfall.
Yeah, I can report on the current situation that we have here. For this month, we have 0.18 inches of rain, giving us a total of 41.57, which I sent out this November report, which you all should have. Relatively speaking, as you know, it's been incredibly dry. And so I think the conditions remain the way they are. One of the things that I found in the report that I filed for Greg, but I can't pull it up right now, water levels, Silver Beach, all of our shallow wells are affected much more quickly than the deeper wells are. Like Silver Beach, Menandic Peninsula, Shorewood, and any places that's in a peninsular area with shallow wells, maybe with 25 feet depth area. When it doesn't rain, they quickly go down relative to the deeper wells. And then you would see that in the water advisory report that Greg did, that all of the deeper wells, they were above the median number, whereas all of the shallower wells were extremely, they went more than the median amount. They were much farther down. So that's kind of to net it out.
Okay. And I've been away for this week, so I gather that this week has remained dry, but Greg is pointing out that there seems to be some rain in the forecast. I'm interested that Greg said that the big four were at median levels despite the higher drought levels.
Right.
I know that, so actually, let me go to Meg and then Lisa. Meg, you had mentioned that we had some reports from Hay Beach of some folks with wells drying.
Yeah, right. I saw that.
Yeah, there is a well out in Hay Beach that did go dry and they had to drive a new well. But it's also an older well, so I don't know, maybe it was for the
It may not
decision to
have
begin
been
with, it might have been
reason
towards
that,
the end
yeah.
of its life anyway, but.
Yeah. It's very subtle also. People in Silver Beach would not know if the well was salted at this level. Most of you could be drinking water that's much more salty than you think, because it tastes good.
Right, the potential,
Okay.
obviously,
that's
testing is
just-
really going to matter.
And that could happen in any of these waterfront properties or properties that have been drawing a lot of water. We have people watering down in Silver Beach, I noticed.
Yes, and we have drawn Mike DeSantis' attention to that, and he has visited those properties. they want their grass to be green.
Some are new plantings too, by the way, that I noticed a hedge.
Well, there is a limit to what you can do with new plantings.
All right, so you're working with your community members, trying to get a little more voluntary compliance with.
Well, we're responding to comments and complaints from residents that come up through the SBA, and then we
Mhm.
work with the building department.
Right. Okay, well, again, I urge you to be as
Interesting
diplomatic
point
as you
here
can.
on this,
One
my
second,
mind, which
Ken,
is-
Ken, I had said Lisa, I wanted to just bring Lisa in for a second. Lisa, you were looking at having a caution sign, a police department, fire department
up.
caution sign. in
It's
the
up.
center. It's done. So we
Yep.
have a sign saying conserve water, we're in a sensitive
It
time.
is, yes.
We have a police
Great.
sign saying drought moderate, I think,
I think it's.
and high risk of fire.
Okay.
Conserve water.
So does Silver Beach.
It's been up there for a couple days.
That's
You have a
great.
sign up?
So Ken
Well,
and then
Police
Andrew.
sign.
Yeah, we're going
Ken,
to,
I see Andrew has his hand up. Ken, did you want to finish a thought? Ken, had you wanted to finish?
Okay, one of the things that I concern myself about sometimes is situations like this, when we have droughts. If we were to get a hurricane, very high tides, like we had the moon, we've had some of the highest tides I've seen in a long time this month. The combination of those two things would really affect these low-lying areas tremendously with regards to saltwater intrusion.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I keep trying to have happen here on the island is emergency water supply location, where any one of us could go with our jugs and fill them up during these periods of time. And we don't have that at this stage of the game.
Good thought. Good thought. It will be relevant to multiple discussions we'll be having. Andrew, you wanted to make a comment?
So I have a question for Joe, and those of you who know more hydrology than I do. The metric we've discussed are well levels versus the median. Okay, but in a situation like this, where we haven't had any rainfall for so long, it strikes me that the moisture content in the soil has to be really, really low.
Gone almost in our area, yeah.
Okay, so the fact that those well levels are median, to actually get us back to quote normal, which includes moisture content in the soil, it would seem to me we would need above normal rainfall to get us to that. So
It's a very interesting thought.
I'm concerned about taking comfort in those well levels. If in fact the soil moisture content is so low, and actually we're going to need a lot of rain in order to get ourselves near normal. And I'm curious, Joe, whether that makes any sense.
It definitely does. But I want to be cautious about not projecting too far in advance on these types of drought alarms, warning level changes. We had always mentioned revisiting the metrics for the different drought levels. You know, I don't want to say arbitrarily chose the 20th percentile. But
True.
it is somewhat subjective, so we could revisit adjusting those. At this time of year, I think our risk for drought, talking about the hydrology, our risk of fire is much greater a risk to our aquifer than folks sort of running dry in wells. Water consumption is overwhelmingly down this time of year. Most people have left for the summer. Irrigation needs are dropping off dramatically, if not stopped. So if we were to implement drought restrictions, we would expect it really to be a public education exercise rather than a meaningful impact to water consumption. But the fire risk is one that is probably extraordinary right now compared to what we normally see. And the potential need for water may impact our decision on how we develop policy around that.
And just to build on your comment, the Northeast Regional Drought, it's section 1, I think it's part 1 in the monthly report, that uses the soil moisture in determining the level of drought. And our level of drought, I looked up the other day, and we remained in the same level, so at least somewhere in the mix, what you're talking about is being addressed by the Northeast Regional Drought.
And the Northeast Regional Drought warning level is what now?
I believe it's still, it remained moderate, but the next level is severe, and all of Massachusetts almost is severe right now.
And that's one of the metrics in our evaluation criteria as well. The other meaningful part about soil moisture now is that in the cooler climate, when transpiration has slowed dramatically, moisture content can rebound quite quickly compared to summertime. For instance, when we see heavy rain in the summer, often we see little impact on aquifer levels because most of the water can be captured by vegetation. Now we would expect more of that water to be percolating through. So we would expect to see a faster rebound for an inch of water, say in November versus, August or July, because more can percolate through more quickly.
Okay. So Doug, you did have your hand up. Do you want to?
I did. I just have a comment about the dryness of our island and the risk of fires, and that while it's outside of our scope, it clearly, to me, suggests restraint on using fireplaces for the risk of embers coming out of the chimney and inadvertently starting a fire.
So it may be useful to use the police sign or the fire department sign that we have up already to incorporate messages along those lines, careful of fire risk, or, care for fire risk. So we can continue to, work with getting our communication right. As Joe pointed out, everything is mostly a communication strategy right now. Have we moved our official drought level, Shelter Island drought level, to moderate drought?
No, but I think there is a statewide open fire
There is a statewide
ban
ban.
right now. Yeah, so we may consider amplifying some of those existing messages in lieu of, the drought status per se, because these state policies are more geared towards the fire risk. And I haven't seen that advertised locally, but I think that is in place.
Well, all good. I'd like, I think that, communication about what are the risks really to pay attention to is really important. So we just talked about the possibility of communicating at the traffic circle around the fire risk, in addition to what we've said already. I just want to make sure that we stay with the rules we've set up, the levels we've set up until we modify them. So if we are technically in moderate drought, I just want to make sure that we've officially moved our own advisory to moderate drought. Have we done that? Are we ready to do that?
Do we fit the criteria?
I'll bet we
Do we
have
fit the
not.
criteria, correct?
There's nothing, there's no program or no action. I think it was patent, that this is the first time we're beating the enemy, which is drought, with that procedure. And it could be changed.
Where is that posted?
But
On the website.
Is it on the WAC website?
yes.
Is it on the town
It will
website?
be posted on the WAC website.
Is there any place on the town website that we
The
put?
status,
Yeah,
we had it as a banner on the homepage, I think not this summer, but the previous summer. Now I believe, absent an alert, it exists on the WAC page, but we should confirm. It's no longer on the main site.
it's not,
Yeah,
we're
there
gonna
is a
go to
drought
WAC,
status
but not-
icon.
the public isn't necessarily going to go there.
Yeah, I think the thinking was absent an alert, it wasn't going to be on the homepage.
Right. So the way we have our drought status updates labeled, it doesn't conform to the mild, moderate, severe. So right now, we're currently under guarded action, which is voluntary reductions in water use. The next one would be a warning action, which is a voluntary reduction in water use with some mandatory requirements. So maybe for something like that, we could revisit this and maybe add a outdoor burning ban or something like that, if we think that this is the way it should go. And then after that, it's emergency action. which is once again voluntary plus additional mandatory requirements. And then the last one we have is shelter island disaster action, which we may want to reword these to be like a mild, moderate, severe kind of thing, because that people relate to better. This I'd have to look up the definitions of, so maybe we wanna kind of come up with a more typical nomenclature.
At a future meeting.
Yeah.
There's plenty of different levels. Everybody's got their own,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's more intuitive.
I'm listening to this, but this doesn't make any sense to me. We've had no rain in September, we had no rain in October, we have no rain through half of November, and still, it's self-evident that there's a drought, and still our criteria handcuff us as if our hands are over our
I'm
eyes
not
saying,
sure
there's
they
not
do.
really a drought out there. To me, this doesn't make any sense.
So I agree with you, Doug, but I don't think we're handcuffed. What I'm wondering is whether we should be officially, and whether by our current criteria, we are in the warning level, that third level.
Mhm.
And I hear you saying, it seems to me we are. Greg, I hear you being uncertain, although I think that we should look very clearly at the criteria we've already established. And if we are in that warning level, I would like to officially be in that warning level. And whether that warning level is posted on the homepage or not, I think that it's upon us to evaluate, are we there now? And as far as I can tell, that warning level is the moderate level of drought.
Can I ask a silly question here? Why did we come up with our own definition and not use the state's definition?
Because we use the USGS, well, it's not USGS, the national, Detroit
Detroit?
drought, it's the drought, Northeast Regional Drought. And that's the feds, and their charts, just, you've seen the charts in the monthly report, so it's more, I think, if memory serves correctly, that was the method, that was the mechanism, those definitions are what we said,
So
okay,
we're
let's
using the
vote.
federal guidelines as opposed to the state's.
That is correct. Seemed like a good idea at the time, it seems like a bad idea now.
It's inconsistent, I think, yeah. So I don't know why we
Nevertheless,
wouldn't
are
just go
where
back
we
to the
are.
state.
Well, it
We
gets
are
back
where
down
we
to
are,
my
and I'm
mind,
going to-
that different parts of the island experience this different ways. Where
Right.
we have water under the ground and we have 60 feet of water or so in the aquifer. It's a different situation than in the near shore areas. We've always had this issue in calling a drought and a warning in some areas and say, oh, what about the center? You can't tell me I can't wash my truck. So this is an ongoing discussion.
These well
It's a
readings,
balancing act that we're trying to pull off here.
these well readings in the center are not really concerning, not to me at least. We've entered the summer at these elevations or sometimes lower. So
Yes.
I think we have to be mindful of not inadvertently putting out restrictions for people. And I want to emphasize the risk here is less about water levels, it's more about access to water if there was a fire and the risk of fire.
Yes.
That overwhelmingly is the biggest risk facing the island right now. Not well levels, not the amount of rainfall. We've had almost a year's worth of rain already.
We did, and this, now remember, we're back to the center issues versus peninsular areas. Different story, totally different story. You
I think
cannot
so.
make the same assumptions, in my mind anyhow, that we do in a near shore area for water levels and being careful, than you can in the center.
All right, so
A lot
Greg,
more
could you
water in certain
distribute
areas.
the water
You do.
levels for the near
The
shore
median
area?
levels of our wells the last time, they're all fine in the deeper wells.
So again, Greg, we're a little hamstrung only because we're not looking at the specific criteria and saying, okay, do we match the next level? And do we match the next level, specifically worrying about the nearshore areas potentially running dry? And we've had some concerns about that. I get that we're kind of at an average. We've kind of cycled from a very high level down to an average level in the center. I think it does behoove us to look at the nearshore areas Joe has the capacity to shift the alert level in between our meetings. And so let's distribute what documents we don't have on hand right now. Take a look at the nearshore area levels. If they are significantly below average, I would recommend that we look at a warning. Go ahead, Ken.
The only point I'd like to make here is that the nearshore areas, Silver Beach, Menanti, and somebody, they have
Hey, Beach,
strong
apparently.
associations. Just like the Silver Beach Association put a sign up about probably 3 weeks ago about water, being conservative with water.
We did, yeah. Well, it was probably back in late September when we put the sign up.
Right.
Now, we're also going to send a letter out to our members in the Silver Beach Association, speaking to voluntarily restricting use of your fireplace for the risk of embers, because we have so much forested area, we would never want to lose that.
Leaves.
Mhm.
Leaves, grasses, all combustible materials.
Okay, so it sounds like we're leaving things at the moderate level or that second level, completely voluntary restrictions for the moment. We're going to look more closely at the nearshore wells, and we can communicate between meetings with Joe, and we've authorized him to move to a warning level if necessary, which might mean that we put a warning on the front page of the website, but not at this time. We're not voting at this time, as I understand this discussion, to make a change. So we're at that second level still, and we can move on to the next agenda item unless anybody else has anything further to add at this time to this discussion. Andrew.
What would be the consequences of going to the next level?
So some mandatory restrictions do kick in at that point. Now we can.
Are
look more
they
closely.
specified?
So on our website, I'm pulling it up right now. So at the criteria 3, normal drought, I'm going to read it out loud. Normal drought measurements rate the current water quantity versus the total capacity of a system. For example, total the shelter island criteria is what it's based on. Doesn't say what you have to do on our website.
I will just say, I am uncomfortable staying at the current level where we've been all the way through the summer, based on,
in the summer, we were at 1, just normal precautions. Then we went to guarded, we're at guarded, and now we're asking ourselves, are we at warning, voluntary reductions with some mandatory requirements? It is true, I would like to have posted what the mandatory requirements are. And we don't have that posted at this time.
I just feel not acting in light of the experience over the last 60 to 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the issues around soil moisture
Mm-hmm.
that we discussed and the fire risk. I feel not acting. I have a hard time supporting that.
So this may come down to, I mean, Joe has said he's concerned about, putting in place any mandatory restrictions at a point before we know there's a real problem. He feels that we're closer to an average than maybe this discussion, some of us feel we might be. It may come down, therefore, to that a vote is required of the committee at this time. Do we want to vote as to whether?
Let me just specify my position.
I'd like to know what the mandatory restrictions are.
Which we have apparently do not have.
He's trying to tell us something.
Peter, would you recognize Meg?
Hi, Peter.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever defined what those mandatory restrictions would be. I feel like that might have been a gap in our.
They're accompanied with the policy, but I think, go ahead, do you want to finish?
Well, I was going to recommend that we follow the state's requirement that says we're in a moderate drought?
Yeah.
Which one was it? Okay,
The more restrictive one is the state versus the feds.
right. I would recommend going with the state's drought level and adding on a burn restriction. So right now it's a statewide burning ban. I'd like to make a
Yep.
banner on the top of the website that says statewide burning ban, moderate drought, please conserve water. Something
Okay,
simple, just so people
that-
understand where we're at.
That sounds wise. Do
We could
others,
revisit-
does the committee think that, are we able to agree that this is the way to approach this? Stick with the state moderate drought, burning restrictions in place. And we had already said that should be part of what we say on the police sign in the center. So if we're all in agreement with Meg's suggestion, let's just vote it in and move now to, we have burn restrictions posted on the website and in the town center.
Would support that.
Yes, I would.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so all in favor then?
I,
Okay, that is, so we will now post on the website and in the town center, moderate drought, burn restrictions, or however we phrase that, we can work on phrasing it.
And then I just want to make another recommendation that we revisit our drought criteria and make it more
Meaningful.
intuitive.
Yes.
Mhm,
long overdue.
okay.
It's confusing.
I have a question with relation to this. Is there any, like the fire departments, do they abide by any kind of burn restriction laws that we need to look at or comply with or be at least compatible with?
I think they follow the county and state recommendations.
County,
So the
okay.
county came out with a burn restriction and then the state came out with a burn restriction. So actually, I believe the county came out with it first. So currently, yeah.
Okay, so
So
we can,
they announced to all the fire districts when there's a problem.
my thought is perhaps asking the fire department on their sign to post the burn restriction. You know, there's only so much information you can put on the police sign. You've got, 3 seconds before people drive by, and there's a lot for them to read. And the fire department is very, gets your eye, it's
Yeah,
colorful.
it's very bright.
So I wonder if that's something that we could ask them if they would possibly post.
I thought it was already up there, but I'll check with them.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so we have a post to the website, we have a post to the fire department sign, and
Limited to-
possibly an edit on the town, on the center sign. Okay, Andrew, go ahead.
Who is going to review the criteria around the drought?
I think it's a good winter project for the committee to do. We should get this on the agenda
Yeah.
in the subsequent months. My point about the hesitancy on the drought level status is that the drought level status is built around water conservation for drinking water access. We never considered that we would be trying to implement wildfire protection.
Right.
And my apprehension about focusing on the drought requirements is that you're going to impose restrictions that aren't really addressing the issue. The issue is we have fire risk. So I think this is a great compromise to advertise the fire risk before we start telling folks that they can't wash their car in December. It's,
Right.
uh,
Okay, so I think we're there. Unless, again, I don't want to stifle this discussion, but I think that we've kind of.
Amber's got her hand up, Peter.
I just
Sorry,
sent, Amber, I'm here since
Amber, please.
it's not here today. I just re-forwarded what I had at the town board level the last time drought restrictions were talked about. So you'll, if you look in your emails, you've got that now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so if we're ready then to move on to the mission statement. I think that Andrew circulated to all of you the mission statement with Ben's changes largely accepted. Almost all of them were accepted, but then there was 2 or 3 little edits. You might have that in front of you. I don't know if you can see the red line. Doug?
Peter, I just had a question. Did we get any other comments from any other members of the town board on this draft?
The town board did review Ben's comments and asked us to then, respond.
So they voted
They didn't
upon
give us
Ben's
separate
comments and then
comments
submitted them?
individually.
No, they didn't vote on them.
No, we didn't vote on them. We just sent them back to you so you could look at them.
I was curious.
Right.
So what do I-
And my edits were only to acknowledge that we have a responsibility, you know, let's say we commission there are 2 or 3 different studies that are done that aren't exact, that need synthesis. We need to be able to make to act, to advise. So we need to be, you know, we can't abdicate our responsibility to advise as an advisory committee. So
So to answer your
my edits are
question,
directed toward that.
Doug, if we adopt this, then it goes back to the town board, and then they will adopt it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're waiting for us to do it today.
Mm-hmm. And again, I mean, if all of you have seen this, and you've seen it a couple of times now, and this was, Andrew circulated it with final, you know, small revisions. This is largely what Ben was requesting of us, just with being careful about words at the end. So take a moment to look, and if everybody's in agreement with this, we'll just accept the final changes and then forward it back to the board.
I'm in agreement. I mean, I looked at it, so.
Mm-hmm.
I underlined a number of things in red, and there's a check mark next to each, which means that I was very satisfied with them. I'm happy with them.
Good, good.
I can support this.
Good, good. All right, then I'll make the motion to approve this draft as edited.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
All right, so this goes back to the board. So now we've been asked to develop an RFP. Following up on Andrew's presentation about the cost comparisons of various hypothetical scenarios of using private water filtration and using community water supply or small extensions in some areas to community water supply. Ben and the whole board tasked us with revising, with developing an RFP for a study on the alternatives for potable water across the island. One was done in 2005. I circulated it to everyone. I hope it's long, so I hope you've at least had a chance to familiarize yourself with the 2005 Nelson Voorhees study of potable water alternatives specifically. And we're now kicking off a process of how we are going to develop an RFP and ask for proposals for updating that so that we have a 2024-2025 study of, you know, expert study of potable water alternatives. Lisa, or
First, Peter, I really appreciate your circulating the 2005 document. It was a very good read.
mm-hmm.
And I have a question, and it's either to you or to the town board, I don't know, which is, what exactly is the remit for this RFP?
I was gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah, it seems to me that when you start with an RFP process, you solicit proposals by first offering a scope as to what it is that you are seeking. Seems to me that it would be very helpful for the town board to give us a scope as to what they were looking for, and then we can develop an RFP based on that scope.
I am submitting this report to the committee because I believe this should be the scope for our project. It's, I think, not exactly what's been publicly discussed as what's needed, but I believe this is the scope that is what's needed to answer these questions for the community. So the purpose of distributing this ultimately is saying, look at what we have done already. I believe that this is the starter for that discussion about the scope of this project. And I believe that this approach is very much what needs updating in today's conversation.
So we have the report, but excuse me, could we see their proposal?
Oh, I don't have the proposal, but
Okay, but also could we see what they made a proposal upon? They were
No, that I don't have.
provided with a scope?
okay, I don't have that. I just have the end product, and the scope that's stated in here as the intention of the report is, I believe, what we should be looking to
Well, it's
duplicate.
different than an intention. An intention is different than a scope. A scope is a series of specific to-dos.
Yes, that's what's in here. I mean, what they lay out as their objectives for analysis and consideration is what I think our scope should be.
So
for this
you
RFP.
would want to update that.
I would like to update this, but I think this is the starting place for that discussion about what other perhaps modifications the town board would like to see on what this product.
This is huge. This is a
Okay, so
huge document.
I've got some more questions about this. What's the budget for the work?
We don't know.
No, you must have a budget.
I don't have a budget.
Somebody's got to step up and say, we're willing to spend the money. Otherwise, this is,
This was the task from,
but that's silly. You you have to
Okay,
know.
so
So when this conversation happened at the town board level, my initial recommendation was that the committee collect all the previous studies that we've done. Because it's coming from a lack of understanding at the town board level on what information we, the town, actually possess. And so there's a general understanding that we know nothing. When we actually have done quite a few pretty
Enormous
extensive
amount of work.
studies on our groundwater, on modeling, on, alternative water sources.
This is
So
huge. I mean, this
my
is-
recommendation to the board and to this committee was, before we create an RFP, let's collect all the studies we currently have and see if there are actual gaps in our information. Or if these studies, when looked at together, then create questions that we need to further follow. So I would say start there, collect what we have and figure out what we're missing or what we want to know more about. And maybe if we can create a summary document to present to the town board, we can see what information the town board wants to see more of. I think that there's a general lack of understanding on what we already have in our possession.
All right, but we have collected up all of the studies. Ken did a great job over the years of organizing our SharePoint, or what became our SharePoint files. I find myself without any lack of studies in 2005, 2014, and throughout the years 2016 through 2019. We have clearly I think you're making a good suggestion, Meg, that we create an index for the board of the studies that we have. But we know these studies. From 1970 through very, very recently, 2021 USGS. We know the studies, and I think, yes, it would be good to create a summary index, a small summary, and I'd be happy to take on that project. Anyone can join me. I actually asked Ken maybe to join, look at what I do, and he'll tell me, oh, you missed this other one we had.
Yeah.
But yes, so we definitely want an index for the board for the studies that are already present. Nevertheless, I do not think that the request for proposal mandate that came to us from the board only a few weeks ago was as vague as all of that. And I think that Joe is correct. In the context of the discussion, which again followed our Firehouse presentation of the cost alternatives of private filtration, 3 different private filtration options, and community water supply, this is the RFP that we're being asked to begin to generate is an RFP around potable water alternatives. And that's the reason why Joe pulled up this particular study out of our many studies, and why I'm asking you all to look at it very, very closely. I think it's very interesting. It aligns very much with the discussions that have happened since that time. But I do believe that and we should ask the board to confirm, but I do believe that the scope is what is the expert consultation recommendations for potable water alternatives in various areas of the town. Now, if you read all the way through the 2005 study and you read through its conclusions, at the time that study was done, they felt that at Silver Beach, they said West Neck, I think they meant Menantic, but that Silver Beach in the peninsula areas, they felt that there was not enough water for a community water supply to be viable in those areas. They felt that the community seemed to not want, and this is our experience has confirmed, any connecting to the off-island water in any way. They felt that the only area in which community water supply or community water extensions should be considered would be in the very center. And there they thought it was perhaps advisable to explore that further. And so, it really, I do believe that a full read through of the 2005 study, if it were 2024, you'd say, okay, this guides us. Now, I think that same study done again in 2024, what are your alternatives for potable water in different areas? I think it would be a little more, I think it would be very interesting. I think there's a suggestion in the Nelson Voorhees study that we might need to, in the peninsula areas, get quote unquote creative as you read through that. So and over the years, we've gotten creative. We have 4 homes in Montclair Colony with a single well under the roadway. So there may be mini solutions. We may also find that a follow-up study finds that on Menantic Peninsula, there may or may not be the possibility of community water or, again, I don't want to guess ahead of time what they'll find, but we kind of want to know that. And I think that they'll look at the center area, at least a restricted area of the center, and say, yeah, you should be exploring your feasibility options there. But again, guesswork. I would like to see us moving toward clarification with the board that they do in fact want potable water alternatives, a potable water alternatives study, updating the study that Joe had presented to our board. Yeah, go ahead, Joe, Ken.
In reading over our new mission statement and so forth about for the island community and for future generations, one of the things that I thought about here is what makes it very hard for us to nail down anything here in the way of a plan. We know a lot about our situation in the various parts of the island. What we don't really have is a build-out plan from the town as to what they would like to do. Like, do they want community housing, and if so, where? Things like density is wrapped up into this. Zoning is wrapped up into this. And so unless we have an idea as to where they're going with the town in the long run, it's really hard to make a long-term plan for water or septic in so many ways, because that's the limiting factor that we have on this island.
But I do
The availability
Can I just
of water
also,
by area.
I'd
Yeah,
like
Lisa.
to also state that how much confidence does the town board have in this exercise? How much of work that this is going to demand of us? And is it going to be a work that the town board will confidently say, yes, we're going to take your recommendations? Or is it going to be cast aside and a call for other work from, say, a professional going to take, be what they request? Am I making myself clear? So I think that that's imperative, is the confidence level that we are instilled with.
Yeah, what problems are we trying to solve for them? I mean, what's the big issue that they're trying to grappling with here in this area of
I do
water
think that it's
supply?
potable water.
I mean, the reality is, we have a lot of ideas here. We know a lot of technologies. One of the things in the long run that keep bothering me is the issue that we don't know what we're flushing into our aquifer. And the reality is, should we be flushing into our aquifer the same place that we drink out of, and for future generations?
So,
And that's been
Ken,
driving me,
all right,
basically.
but hold on a second, Ken. Ken, in 2026 through 2029, we intend to repeat the USGS baseline study of what's in our aquifer in the various regions. So we are definitely going to be looking at what we are flushing into the aquifer. Probably, and when we did it in 2016, the PFAS, PFOS were not yet so much on the radar. I'm sure they will be added to the radar when we do the 26, 29, 10-year follow-up. So that is a separate study. We know that that's been long planned, what's going into the aquifer. Nevertheless, we're now in the discussion of potable water, how we make sure that people, we can't wait on the question of how people are going to have potable water. We're going to do testing. That's our next topic, so that people are aware that they need to use alternative sources or make some change if that's the case. So, testing will be an ongoing part of the process. We will be doing work with USGS at some length to characterize contamination both on the saltwater side and on the nitrogen/septic side. We'll be doing that over several years coming up. So our alternatives for potable water, making potable water available has become the topic on yeah, Andrew first.
So the second item under our mission statement is define the problem in terms of procedures. I am concerned that potable water for all in Shelter Island is just too big an elephant to eat. I'm also concerned about the cost. Consultants' billing rates for something like this are what, $300 an hour?
Roughly.
So that's 100 hours. $30,000, 150, $45,000. That strikes me as
we are going to need a budget, no question about it.
Let me finish my thought, please.
Okay.
That strikes me as a big number for the town budget. And that doesn't strike me as enough time for a professional to do an update of a study with as broad a remit as this one. So I think what we're going to end up getting is a very high level and largely a response of questionable usefulness.
So what would you like to see in terms of narrowing the scope?
All right, that's where I'm going, Peter.
Okay.
We've done a lot of work over the last year in water quality testing in the center in response to anecdotal evidence that we got a problem in the center. Done a lot of work around that. We have also heard from citizens about water quality issues on the Mananac Peninsula and also in Silver Beach. So if I had to try and narrow the problem, the first thing I would do is narrow it to those three areas. And then I would further, personal opinion, narrow it to the center. Because we have good reason to believe that there are at least some in the center who are drinking non-potable water from their wells. And they may or may not know it. But we suspect that's the case. So I would narrow it to the center. And I think a $30,000 budget could probably get us some good professional advice about the alternatives to deal with the situation in the center. Now, further, when I read the 2005 document, it was based on some macro assumptions that may or may not be true in the long run, but about which there will be a lot of controversy, like full build out, just to name one. If we narrow the problem to the scope to the center, we're basically sidestepping all of that. which is just fine. Because what we're trying to do, I think, is we're trying to come up with some actionable alternatives with regard to the quality issue in the center. Now, my first recommendation around the scope would be, what exactly do we have to do to nail down the extent of the quality problem in the center? Is the testing we've done so far enough? Or should we do more? And if we should do more, what should it be? And how would we accomplish that? And how quickly can we accomplish that? Then I would go into what are the options to address that problem based on those test results. So how extensive is the problem? And that will, I think that will push us towards the most reasonable and cost-effective and implementable solution to the issue in the center. So, and that will, frankly, test and challenge the work that I did around the cost comparisons of handling the situation with basically point of use treatment or community water supply. Because look, I'm just a volunteer. I'm not a professional consultant. I did my best on that, but it needs to be challenged. If we're able to do that and come to some concrete recommendations about the situation in the center, we should demonstrate credibility to the town board and to the community about the robustness of all that and the robustness of those recommendations. And then we move to, I would think, Monanic Peninsula, Silver Beach, and other areas of the island where we are getting unsolicited input that, hey, look, people are saying, we got a problem, help us.
Okay, let me ask you to pause, Andrew. This is you're doing a very good job, and I do get the idea that you're trying to create manageable chunks that we can digest, that we can take on, and I would just like to gather other people's reactions to what you've been saying so far. I'm not going to provide a reaction just yet. I'm interested if anyone, yeah, Meg.
So I think that there's like a general misunderstanding in what Albert really is the one looking for a study. I don't think he's looking for a study on bringing public water to people. He keeps saying, I want a groundwater modeling study. He's looking for what is our water underground doing? How much do we have? What direction is it going? I can only assume and extrapolate that that is the kind of thing that he's looking for, which is why my recommendation was to collect all the studies we already have to demonstrate to him that we have this.
Right, and I think that we know as a group that there is a 2021 USGS groundwater model for the entire island showing where water is going, what rate it's flowing. It has been done. That should be in our index. I do believe that the request, the board member who was leading the discussion about we should have an RFP for a study of potable water was Ben. And not
Greg
Al.
is shaking his head. I would like to know why.
Just, Meg, it really comes down to the word, what is modeling? What, and what you're saying, take all the data that you've got, and maybe this committee could look at that and say, we got holes here, there, and there, and now we're in a position, stage 2 is we know what we used to, what we did know, and we know where the gaps are. You fill in the gaps, and then you can move on to the next state, which I'm not even talking about,
Right, and I think part of the problem is you are not getting clear direction from the town board. I don't think that the town board has made the intention for what they want to see clear.
And it's our job to ask that.
And
It's
I
our
don't-
job to ask that of the board. And what I'm wondering is what Andrew just said, which is to ask, can we narrow the scope to what a study of potable water solutions in the center? how people feel on on our committee about his suggestion that first we narrow it to that, ask the board, are you interested in an update to the 2005 Nelson Voorhees work for potable water alternatives, just focusing on the center at this time, with an intent to move on to the peninsular areas and other areas subsequently, so that we have a focused study that just tunes into that particular concern. Are we okay with Andrew's
I'd
suggestion?
say
Peter,
no.
I'm having a very hard time getting the concept of this, conceptualizing this, because it seems like it's apples and oranges. We're looking for, maybe I'm using the wrong words, a hydrological and geological modeling. Model. But then we're talking about just keeping it to the center. To define what's happening here, and I don't think it works like that. You have to look at watersheds. Just a minute, Peter. So I think that we really have to be clear about what we're all saying. And I look at this body of information, and this is great, but I am not able to extrapolate from here what's missing and what's not. Because I don't know enough.
What are you looking at?
The Voorhees.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's massive.
Yes.
And I've gone through it, and it's huge. So I am not really, I couldn't tell you what's missing in there.
Let me add a little context to that, because I follow Andrew's logic, and I think it makes excellent sense. But where I think we have gotten a little bit ahead of our skis, so to speak, on providing solutions. And what I find most advantageous about this study, first, is that it demonstrates the community was thinking of all of these issues 20 years ago, and they went through the effort of paying for defining this information here. The second is that it addresses many, if not all, of the comments that we heard at the Firehouse presentation. What is the impact to density? What is the impact to build out? What are the actual concepts of water supply that we could be deliberating over? Many of these things are outdated, the number of vacant parcels, the cost of water delivery. Many of the concepts are still exactly what we're discussing today. So when I'm hearing the town board say, we want an island-wide model, my initial reaction to that is we have island-wide models on the groundwater flow directions, the groundwater elevations, particle flow paths. Largely, the geology does not change in this time frame, but what I take from the town board's request is that they're looking for an island-wide analysis. And I think that this particular study looked at all of those concepts that we hear today that are sort of question marks about what is the impact now? What is the impact to development? There are comments about health department regulation, number of vacant parcels that could potentially be converted for development. That is so relevant to the conversation today, and I think that information has been absent many of our discussions about water delivery service. And that's, I think, the key value here is that it looks at these social, economic impacts of water delivery systems that we've not quite filled in the blanks in today's discussion.
Can I just tag on that? This is off of the comprehensive plan at the time. The information supplied by the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
We now have a comprehensive plan that we are working on, that whether it gets, the whole thing gets a GEIS, analysis or not, I don't know. But that, a lot of the information that they used came from a comprehensive plan, so we can use the data in the current comprehensive plan with regards to build out, and all of the updated information to take this sort of approach, to take what's in here and apply it, but we're talking about 25 years later here. So
Yes.
it seems like we have to use the information that's current.
Yes, I think we've taken this a bit too far as a committee on the technical level, because all of the feedback we're getting is about questions answered in this report about density, about zoning, about concepts, taking water from off island, delivering it here. And we need to revisit those.
Right.
So
will
Joe,
help.
if I
We
can
will
just
need to
ask.
have the comprehensive plan finished and complete for someone to be able to use it as a reference, right?
I believe so, but if I'm being honest, many of the objectives of this study acknowledge the same conversation pieces, preservation of open space.
Right.
The analysis was really a numbers game. You know, they looked at how many parcels are we delivering water to? How many vacant parcels are subject to development? What is the average parcel size? What does the health department regulate in terms of minimum parcel size? So those things don't really,
It won't change.
they won't, no. And they are a consistent comprehensive plan to comprehensive plan. So I don't think that a comprehensive plan needs to be the critical path towards doing this. And you can see all that. It's very clearly called out as to what
You
the,
just have to update the numbers, that's all.
yes.
So getting back to the commitment by the town board for this project, in order for us to do this composition and collecting of information, do we have the invoice for this report saying how many hours were
Doug, I
they
found this
invoiced?
in a dusty box. And nobody really knew that this document even existed a
we
couple
have it.
couple of weeks ago.
Posted.
So, no, I don't have a lot of the background information. It's,
I would venture to say that that is not a $33,000 report.
I don't think so, but updating this, if we can get on board with this being mostly aligned with what we want as a scope, updating this is a much smaller task than starting from scratch. And even if this document serves as a guide for pieces that we want to pull from this, singular analyses that we want to replicate, some of them potentially could be done in-house. And perhaps there are just a few that we would like to see.
That's a very different scope, an update of an existing document, as opposed to doing something
Of course.
from whole cloth.
Two of the alternatives was using off-island water.
Right.
Now, Suffolk County has told us, that's crazy, you don't want to do that. So we can eliminate those two.
yeah.
There's a lot of red marks in there. And there's not a lot of, in this area, the water table is that thick or, mile high, they didn't do what I think the irrigation report that was done by Leggett Brashear. There's all sorts of information there on depth of water and all that. I think I did a check, and saltwater intrusion, there was like, there was like one or two times in the entire report did the word intrusion show up. Now, that's one of the problems. They didn't address, they didn't even speak to it.
Clearly will improve the scope if we get there. But I still think that we need to know the town board is willing to spend the money in order to have this done. And I haven't heard the answer yes to that question.
I also want to
Yeah, go
add
ahead.
a somewhat different perspective, which is, I don't live in the center. But if I did live in the center and I were pulling water out of my well, it was a year ago that we had the results. And here we are a year later. And now what we're going to do is we've decided we have to study the whole island situation before we're going to do anything about my water in the center. I just, maybe I should take off my old hat as a water supply guy. That's just not fast enough. And which is why I was trying to narrow the scope.
So
Because
there's a
we've done
conversation
all
between
this
Joe and
w-
Andrew here. That's
What?
important. There's a conversation between Joe and Andrew here right now. And the conversation is whether to keep it focused on the center or whether to plan on updating the entire study for all areas. And I thought that there was a compromise hinted at in your conversation, which was to ask the board, do they want us to first have a phase where we update this study in terms of its center aspect, recommendations and options, with the intent of looking specifically at nearshore communities thereafter, Or do we want a larger update to this study that's the entire study in all of its areas? And again, Joe spoke to that and you have spoken to that. And I kind of am looking for a way to synthesize the two points of view you're presenting.
Andrew, what do you imagine to solve that problem for the folks in the center? I mean, my take is that we have we've collected the data, good data. We have made subsequent presentations with data analysis, some conclusions about options. We presented about options, and it seems that absent any request for major projects, that this is sort of the will of the board at this stage and the community, that the private well model is what we're continuing to work on.
Right. So what I'd want to know, because look, we have done good work in the center, but the tests that we've done in the center were a fairly narrow range. They weren't full potability analysis.
Right.
So I would want to test more wells, and I would want to test each one of those wells with a full panel. And I'd want to
These are all the
know,
ones that have high nitrogen.
wait, can I finish?
Go ahead.
So I'd want to know what that data says. That data will tell us the extent of give us a very good view of the extent of the problem.
Mhm.
That, in other words, where is it? How widespread is it? Is it clusters here, here, and here, or is it widespread? There would then be, focusing on nitrates for a minute, there would then be a community discussion about whether we're comfortable shooting for the MCL, 10 milligrams a liter, or whether we really want to get it down below 5. That's a community discussion. Based on that, those two inputs, we would then be able to recommend, you know what, the best way to solve this problem is actually point of use, or the best way to solve this problem is community water supply. We really don't know that yet. The work that I did only told us that the costs weren't that different if you're going to allow the Suffolk County Water Authority to own the assets. They're really different if not. If the town wants to own the assets. So I don't think we're quite there yet. I'd really like to get there. Then we can make a clear recommendation to the town board about what it is to solve the problem here that everybody's been talking about for decades. And I'm concerned that if we don't get onto that quickly, we'll lose that focused discussion in an island-wide study that will stir up a lot of controversy. I don't mind doing the island-wide study in parallel, but I'd rather focus on the center because that's where we think we've got an issue, and that's where we've done the testing so far.
Joe, are you okay with the idea of a phased process? That is, that we study the potable water alternatives beyond Andrew's work, that we study the potable water alternatives in the center with the intent to study the potable water alternatives in the different nearshore communities thereafter, that we ask the board to allow us to narrow our scope so that we're updating Nelson Pope 4 East 2005 for the center primarily at this time?
I think these are concurrent efforts, as Andrew described. This suggestion is in response to the board's request for island-wide modeling for further policy development. And we can continue to analyze and develop solutions for the center. Those don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Okay,
Can I just ask-
let's have, just a minute, let's have dollars associated with each phase. So that,
Your next phase for the center is additional testing, right?
pretty much.
So you know, the no-cost option is to notify everybody to call up and spend their own $100 and submit to us their potability results, and we can analyze the data similarly.
Haven't we already done this though? I mean, I don't understand how we're going to go deeper when we've already asked the people in the center to take a test and we've got X amount of responses. So in your mind, what are you looking at? How are you looking at it to proceed from that point?
I'd go to the Suffolk County Department of Health and I'd say, we've got an issue. We want you to help us run full potability tests in this particular area and see if we can get, I mean, my understanding is they do that where there's an issue, where there's a concern around contamination.
Yes,
Okay.
they do a survey.
So we're now at 150 tests. Can we get that to 300? Because what I'm hearing from the community, people who have come up to me after I took all the incoming artillery and the fire out, okay, what I'm hearing is, first of all, you're pushing community water, which I'm not. Second of all, community water is an overreaction to the problem we have. We don't need to do all that. So my answer to that is, we really need to define the problem we've got. We need more data to really understand that challenge.
So would the first step, I'm just trying to get it in my simple brain, would the first step be to go door to door and talk to people so that they would be willing to give us permission to have a test? Because we sent out that, to 400 people, we got 148 responses. So I'm just trying to think, you can't strong arm people.
No, we got
into it. So what are we gonna
148
do?
responses. We've had a lot of discussions since.
A lot of discussion.
So other 350 people in that area now know what the results were for the 148. So maybe if there's another round of testing, a bunch of them will put their hands up and go, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
So I don't exactly know how to do it. I'm concerned, though, about spending a lot of time to update a 2005 study that basically spent its time the last 20 years in a box.
At least the last 5.
Okay, at least
At least the last
five.
5, yeah.
But it never got acted on.
No.
And so this policy, this mission statement or procedures document, it says we have a bias to act,
Yes.
Mhm.
Can I?
not a bias to talk. And
Jason
so,
Klein came and gave us, when he gave us that PowerPoint,
yeah,
he gave us information from the Suffolk County Health Department that says since 1987, the nitrate levels have increased by 41.2%.
Okay.
Their trajectory is up, it doesn't go this, it's a fact. And so we have this data, and since 2005, when this Voorhees report was issued, there's been a 9.2 increase in nitrate MCLs. So we have that information, and it's increasing at the rate of 0.038 milligrams per liter per year, according to the Suffolk County Health Department. Okay, it's in his PowerPoint.
Countywide.
well, okay, let's just quote a fact out of that 2005 study. In 2005, the number of wells, the 85% of the wells tested with nitrates at less than 5 milligrams a liter, okay? This is what work we did. That number was down to 45%. Okay, in other words, it's gotten worse.
It is.
Which is your
yes.
point.
Yes, it is.
And so, but we haven't done anything,
Nope.
all right?
Not yet. Not yet.
And so again, my reaction to this is it's based on a bias toward acting, towards actually solving this issue, so that we can say to our citizens, we understand there's an issue, and these are the steps we're taking to deal with it. And that's what governments ought to do.
Well, there's that philosophical difference that some people don't believe that
Well-
governments should be doing that, that it's
Okay.
private citizens' responsibility. No, but this is a very real argument.
No, but that may be the recommendation.
Yeah.
The recommendation may be, actually, we've evaluated this, it's pockets. And it's pockets of contamination, and the right way to deal with it is for you to put in a point of use system. That's the right way to deal with it.
That may
May
be
be
the right
where
way
we
to deal with it
land.
in many cases. It is.
We
the
don't
right
know.
way to deal with it. But however, despite your impatience, Andrew, there is a request that we have expert evaluation of these things. And
Well,
that
I
might
think
just be
I'm-
our recommendation.
I'm
So
not disagreeing with that.
Right.
I just think we can go ask the town board exactly what do they want.
Mhm.
I actually think it's incumbent on us to recommend what we think we should do. Because
Right, and-
we're closer to the issue than they are, and
Right.
we understand it at a technical level better than they do. And
Right.
they've got a lot of things on their plate.
Right. So I agree with you, which is why I'm seeking a synthesis here.
Okay.
And the synthesis I hear is that we are not losing sight of the island-wide nature of the 2005 study, but we are asking the town, first of all, are they primarily focused on potable water alternatives? And can we phase the process such that we focus in on the center first, where we're very clear that there is at least a rising nitrogen level, a rising concern, and then move to other areas? And if so, what is the budget that budget level that they would be comfortable with for that study, that first phase of the study? Again, I'm looking from Joe, who's, held fast to the town board seems to be asking for island-wide, and you are focusing us on the center because we haven't taken action and know that there's a concern. So the synthesis might be a certain amount of money from the town board, a budget for a study. We feel that the commensurate with, we can say, once they say a number, commensurate with that, we should do a phase that's the center primarily. And that we go further after that. So we are sending something back to the board, and that's what I'd like to establish is, what is our question, refining our remit for this RFP? How are we phrasing that question to the board about what they exactly want us to get an RFP for?
All right, so my response to that would be, we recommend they approach this on a phased basis and focus on the center first, do the island-wide and get a dollar number, and do the island-wide work, the updating of the 2005 as a second phase. That's our recommendation. And then the question to the board is, okay?
Right. So, but the first, it's a question to your fellow committee members.
Right, that's correct.
Right. So, okay, do we feel that that is the recommendation to the board, that they repeat the entire Nelson Pope Voorhees 2005 study over time, but that they offer us a budget, and our recommendation is that budget should be targeted to the alternatives for the center?
Let me sharpen that a little bit. I would
Go
like
ahead,
to
Joe.
make my recommendation in response to Ben's request for the island-wide study. This is what I would put forth and say, I believe this is the scope, should be the starting point for discussion on scope of what I think you're asking for.
In other words, the way he expressed it, which is phase one,
Phase one.
the center, phase two, the larger work. Ben, that's how we're responding to your request. Is that okay?
I don't even necessarily want to put it in one or two. Your request, Ben, was for island-wide study. I believe the board is asking for island-wide models, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I would put forth to answer that question. Separately, and perhaps concurrently, the committee wants to further explore and close out their analysis of the center simultaneously, perhaps.
I think that the island-wide thing it takes us out into Yaga land.
They didn't ask us, there was no request to say,
Sure.
go, I believe their position is the center effort is concluded. We presented the data, we presented possible solutions, and we've not heard a single thing from the public, from the board about advancing the effort.
Actually, we didn't provide a recommendation about what to do. What we did was we provided a cost comparison on different alternatives, but we did not pick one.
Can I make,
We don't have to pick one, though. I mean, I don't think our task was to
We didn't make a recommendation.
Can I
Our
just-
process document says that we make a recommendation. We didn't do it.
the people that
Okay,
came to
so
that
Lisa-
meeting,
yeah,
can I
let
just
Lisa
say that the
finish
people
that.
that came to that meeting, when I looked out at the audience, because I was facing, they weren't people who live in the center.
No.
They weren't people looking for solutions. They were people that live other parts of the island that primarily came to shoot down Suffolk County water, or
Any public water.
public water, community water, however you want to phrase it. I was looking and I was trying to assess, is there anyone here who had those numbers and is concerned about their water? And I couldn't. So I think, Andrew, what I'm trying to get at is that we're getting resistance from people who are not affected by the results. So we have to do a better job of going to the center, canvassing and educating the public, maybe door to door, and just saying, how do you feel about this? Are you satisfied with what you're drinking? Would you like to understand more and become part of a bigger scope of testing?
They don't want it.
And I think we have to sort of hit the pavement.
So
I mean, I don't
Lisa, I
know.
think that's an excellent suggestion, and I think that it's separate from the idea of this topic of a request for a proposal for a study. And again, even in our looking at our mission statement, the edits were toward the point of view that we would consult expert, professionals in the field. We want to know from the board, are they concerned, is the request that they want us to develop primarily focused on potable water, and can we phase the work so as to get a manageable chunk at a time from the highest priority to the lowest priority areas in our estimation.
I think that's a
So
reasonable
I'd
request to
like to
make
do
to the
what you're
town board.
suggesting, Lisa, and work with the community in the center as well. But that's our job, but that's separate from what the board is asking us.
Well, no, I mean, I'm answering what, I'm trying to follow
Andrew.
Andrew's suggestion on
Yes, and I get it.
ameliorating what is happening here. And
Right.
so
So
that's,
anyway, we were tasked specifically with at a board meeting just recently with developing an RFP in follow-up to all these discussions, including the firehouse discussion. So I assume that the request is for potable water alternatives again. We have a previous study they should be aware of. We have an island-wide hydrological model of flow that they should be aware of. We're going to index those things for them. We've already made that a task that Ken and I are going to work on. So now we are looking for guidance as to the RFP they want us to develop. We have two general remit right now. So again, I'd like to present back to the board our recommendation that we update the 2005 Nelson Pope Voorhees so that we're focused on potable water alternatives with a phased approach, allowing us to focus on highest priority to lowest priority area. I disagree with you, Joe, that the conversation is complete as to exactly how the center should be handled. I do understand that many areas, including areas in the center, may be best handled by private filtration. I'm not pushing public water either, but I do feel that we are asked for expertise to back up what we've done so far, which is to explore the alternatives for solution, for moving toward a recommendation for solutions in the center. And that may well be, most people go onto private filtration. There may be small extensions to the public water based on what we find out from Sachem's Woods. But I think that we do need to acknowledge we're being asked for expert consultation along with the process of making recommendations. Evaluate those and I do agree with Andrew that it should be short enough and small enough that we can get to, that we're not waiting for 5 years with stuff
Oh, yeah.
collecting dust in a box. So again, it's not, the board's got to tell us, yes, we want you to do a update for the potable water alternative study. Yes, we want you to focus on area by area so that you can come to conclusions about given areas.
So can
And
I summarize?
personally agree with Andrew that the center deserves an answer.
Can I summarize,
Action
Peter?
recommendation.
that
Go ahead,
what-
Lisa.
What I'm hearing is that we go to the town board with this recommendation that Joe has presented. And we ask them, how much money are we going to budget toward this? Are we hiring a professional? And what type of professional are you going to have confidence in?
Mhm.
If we had passed this off to somebody else? Okay, we need to be very specific about who are you going to be confident in that this is a valid?
Well taken, well taken. We
Okay,
should be
so-
asking that question.
Those are the questions that I'd like to know, because we're doing a lot of work, we're making a lot of suggestions, we're talking about money, but is the end result going to have the impact, or is it going to incur confidence? Is it going to be used? So that, I think, is a very important question that the town board has to come back to us and say, yeah. And they don't have the time, I don't think, I'm speaking out of turn, to read this 250-page document. I mean, it's
Absolutely agree.
huge. So they have to either have confidence in the board here that what we're advising, and in our town engineer, that what he's advising is substantive,
Mhm.
you know,
Right,
That's
absolutely.
where I'm
Absolutely.
going with that.
Yep, Greg?
It strikes me that if we're going to try and push hard at the center, it's a little bit ready, shoot, aim. I think that there's people on the island that deserve answers, but it deserves a proper analysis. Meg's thought on, let's take the documents that we have historically produced and understand what they say and try and work out what are the gaps. And maybe you can hire somebody to do that. That's possible. I think that maybe this committee could. And then you have a chance to say, now let's aim and start shooting towards either near shore or center. There's a lot of complexity that goes with it. If the thought is community water, that in itself puts a 5-year delay from people saying, what do you mean we're going to be able to develop more density in the center of the island? What do you mean we're going to be able to do this? What do you mean this releases TDRs? You know, there's a lot of topics that are associated with community water that they're prickly. That, you know, that's grabbing a cactus.
Can I ask you a question? We take
That would be
this,
two.
okay, we take this to a professional agency, okay? Or this, and collect all the data, and we give it to them, and they come back with a suggestion of community water. What if they,
Then
you know,
what?
then what? Then it's not just those of us who are talking about it here in the hot seat, but would they be willing to accept that option from another organization?
If they would, if before that step, they said, and here are the gaps in your knowledge of what the aquifer is all about, the true modeling. I understand modeling to a lot of people means how does the water flow? But there's so many other aspects to it. The modeling is a complex, it's very complex
There are
down there.
multiple models, as the USGS showed us.
So
It's a
Meg's
big
comment,
model.
I think I would more think what Meg advised in terms of that aspect. Find out, we know this because Nelson Pope or Leggett or whoever did that. We know this. Damn it, we don't know what that is. And now we're in a position to say,
But Greg,
let's
we
think
are
about how did
intending
that
to
happen,
index our
and then
studies.
move forward.
Greg, we have already decided, we're going to index our studies so that we have a more of a, paragraph on each so you can know what things we know. So we will have an index of our studies over the course of this next month or two. Again, we're not moving forward at this time, developing a request for proposal. We're simply dialoguing with the board to be sure that we know what we're being asked. We were asked to develop a request for proposal. We feel that we have not been given a sufficiently clear mandate on that. We want to suggest a mandate so that they don't have to come invent the wheel. Again, our suggestion is that we study potable water alternatives, and that we phase that into manageable chunks.
Well, Meg and Amber, as our liaisons,
Yes.
are you getting where we are, and just as representatives of the town board right now, is this satisfactory?
My understanding was do an inventory of everything that we have. Try and figure out what's missing, what do we need to do, synthesize it all together, and then go from there. Which is probably where, at some point in there is when the consultant would get brought in.
So we're doing what you asked. Okay.
Maybe
Folks,
Greg,
I got a train to catch. It's been fun, but I'll see you
Right,
next
okay.
month.
Good luck catching your
Right.
train.
Stay afloat, Greg.
Okay, so again, Amber, you're saying you like the idea of indexing all of our documents, all of our studies, so that the board knows what we have. And can we turn to the board and ask for more precision as to what they want an RFP for, with the recommendation that it be around potable water alternatives and the possibility that it be phased into areas?
I don't know if that second part of it's surrounding potable water and then be phased is part of the ask.
So,
It's a
okay,
broader ask. That's my understanding.
sorry, say again, what is your?
My understanding is it's a broader ask. It doesn't have that level of specificity yet.
Mm-hmm. So an
Because we brought that
RFP
into this conversation.
Yes.
Right.
So what is the ask? And if it's a broader level, could you describe it?
It's my understanding is that an island-wide aquifer study. And so the counter to that is we have a lot of information already existing. So to get to what exactly is the ask, let's understand what we have so that we can refine that ask.
Okay, so you're saying that we should first do the indexing of of the studies that we have in place for the board.
And
leave
we
it
are
at that.
charged with reading through all of this, correct? Just to be clear.
Probably.
You already have it in one place, right? It's
Yes.
all in SharePoint,
We
in a
have-
file. Share that with the board members with an index, just saying, these are the names of the studies, these are the basic conclusions. You can almost copy and paste the conclusion from every study. I mean, I was gonna just do that. Just so that there are members of the board who really have no idea what studies have been done, or at least it's sounding like they have no idea what information we as a town have about our town. So just trying to create that inventory of knowledge that some of us know, some of us don't know, so that everyone could be on a baseline. And then from there, when we try to get clarity on what exactly it is they want studied, we can say, okay, but we studied that here, what about this study, do you need more information on?
Okay.
Oh, we studied that over here, what information are you looking for that's not covered here?
And when?
And, yeah, so that we can get clarity from the other board members on what they would like to know.
But the data exists today and has existed for years, that data. And it's all been, it's basically stored away, they're titled, it's dated, the results are there. To me, this is again another delaying, this is kind of pushing the old, down the road a little bit
I
there.
know it's frustrating,
We've been
Ken.
going around on this for so long.
That's true.
Right, but Ken, you and I have
We're
both
just trying to
read
get
these through
something
these studies.
definitive out of the town as to what it is that they really would like to know. We have a lot of resistance to people in general with any of it, getting involved in their water. I mean, that goes without saying, and it's always been that way. We're shelter islanders. We'll do it our way. Get out of our way. Thank you very much.
It's
We
very.
have issues about people on zoning. This is turning, the public water thing has turned into a zoning issue and a density issue. It has nothing to do with public water. It has to do with, oh my goodness, we'll be able to have public housing, higher density housing and stuff like that in my mind. So, I don't know. I'm still confused as to what really the town would like to know. Are they going to have a project shortly that would say it's going to put a demand on our system? We have some townhouses we want to put up someplace, a senior center we want to build. I mean, it's like, if there's no plan that's business as usual, it should be just as it's been going. We do nothing. I mean, basically, we have all the data. We come up with a problem. When a storm hits, then things happen.
Yep.
People run out of water, then things happen.
We
But
don't
nothing
wanna get
happens
ahead of that.
until, you know what, hits the fan. So in my mind, this is kind of where we are right now. It's
All right, so
another,
why don't we just change the narrative and do the work, put it before the town board, and then
we can do
it's
that.
incumbent on us to push it through, to push, right?
You're not going to push something that won't work. That's all.
I don't know.
All right, we
I thought-
we have clarity that we're going to index our studies. I know that Ken and I have read through, have been over the course of more than 10 years, have read through these studies. It won't be that hard for us to index them. Everybody else, I do, appreciate if you would, as much as possible, be looking at, the key studies. We'll be, indexing what we think are the key studies, make sure you've read them. Or at least familiarized yourself with them. I think many of us have familiarized ourselves with many of the studies. We are looking to the board for a little bit more guidance as to the RFP that they want. I'd like to close this portion of the meeting because we don't seem to be ready yet to develop an RFP or to precisely ask the town what RFP they need just yet. Sean has his hand up. Sean, you there? No?
He may be muted, he's muted still.
Sean, you are muted. I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Is he allowed to unmute himself?
I think I got there.
There
You
go.
can hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I'll be very quick. One, thank you to all. I know it's a really painful conversation, but I think you're ultimately getting there because I do think I've taken the time to read through a lot of these studies and quite honestly been amazed about how much we actually already do know, but it's just not in a public, accessible manner, or people haven't reviewed it for a long time. The one thing I would say is that it is clearly very frustrating because we have all this information and it's kind of like, well, what actions can we really take? And you get stuck there. I will just note that most of these reports actually have a handful of actionable items that we continue to discuss but don't act on. And that's not about public water and the like. It's about, very specifically, they've mentioned tree clearing, irrigation, protection of wetlands, and septic tank regulation, all of which we are generally under discussion. And if we're frustrated that we don't have a clear action item as it relates to potable water, why don't we move on those 4 so that we're actually thinking about future generations and, in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam?
So I just want to understand where we've landed. We seem to have landed in indexing what we already know.
No, in that, yes. Every study, by the way, every study.
Please don't interrupt me.
It's built on the previous studies too.
We're going to index what we already know. We're not going to make any recommendation with regard to the center. Is that correct?
I'm not sure we've come to a final vote on anything yet. I personally am in favor of making a recommendation, personally.
Together, you could do it separately.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
One, we index what we already know. And by that, we will identify the studies, the date, and the basic remit, and the conclusions and recommendations. Okay, so there'll be a paragraph that'll describe what it is, so someone could read it, get a sense of what it is. One. Two, that we update the 2005 study that Joe has referenced, first with regard to the center, and that is a discrete expense item, and then with regard to the broader island, which is a second expense item. And we request the town board for the dollars they're willing to spend on each one of those expense items, and also guidance as to what skills and qualifications, what expertise is necessary, will be necessary for the firm doing the work so that they'll have confidence in the results. Full stop. End of
Full
motion.
stop. I second your motion, personally. That is precisely what I would like to see happen.
Okay, so we have I'm taking the gavel from you because you're 3,000 miles away.
You made a motion, and I
Okay.
second your motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Discussion.
Further discussion? Are we able to vote then on this? Actually,
I'd like to
that's
vote
what
on
we're
it.
gonna do next.
Let's go through that again.
All those in favor?
Well, let me just understand it again. Index,
Do it, yeah, say it again, Andrew.
right? So
One.
we have it correctly down, right?
Index what we have
Right.
with a paragraph describing, with a date, a title, and a paragraph describing the recommendations.
Right, all our major studies.
You said also remit, first remit, then
Yeah.
recommendation.
Okay, so remit, recommendation, date, and let's also say the author.
Yes.
Yes, author.
Okay?
Authors.
Second, that we update the 2005 work
Two phases.
in two phases. Phase one is the center. Phase two is the rest of the island.
Mhm.
And that we request a budget for each.
We get a budget for each. When I say budget for each, we ask the board what they're willing to spend on each phase. Okay? Third, we ask the board, what are the qualifications of the consultant that the board would look to or seek to have
Confidence.
confidence in the results? I think that's it.
Yes, and I'm sure Jessica, you're on tracking what Andrew's saying. I see him writing down as well. So we'll be able to get this precise.
We'll get
So
that
we've
out.
had a motion, we've had a second to the motion.
We have discussion.
Any discussion? I mean, been having a long discussion already about this, but
The only thing I'd like to add is our supervisor has made it clear that the index is primarily what they're looking for right now.
yes.
So while
they
we
need
can
that
do
as
this
well before they
concurrently, that would be our priority.
The focus is the index.
Focus right
Our
now,
initial focus,
immediate.
Fine.
as the board considers what Andrew just asked us to ask them to consider. Our
And
suggestion.
what's to be done with that index? Do we give it to the,
That will go to
Publish
the
it?
board and also be available online so that everybody can see it.
And
So
the
that
next
we
step is
can-
to, I'm sorry, Peter. The next step after that then is to figure out what are the gaps in the knowledge that we do have and what needs updating.
Yeah, so these are two tracks that go together, indexing and looking for what are the gaps.
Do we
And
want to,
also
do we
a
want to create a
suggestion-
time frame to do this in so it doesn't go on? Do we want to speculate?
Okay, so I'll amend my motion. By March 31st, there's going to be an index, and included in the index, following the index, is the committee's recommendation around what gaps need to be filled. So we'll go back to the town board with, this is what we have, and this is what I think is, this is what we think is missing.
Is missing.
And we'll do that by March 31st.
Okay. And at the same time, we're asking for, recommending that we update the Nelson Pope Voorhees 2005 in a phased approach, with each phase having a budget that the town board is willing to apply. And that's something we can turn around to the board right away, because they'll have some time talking about that and thinking about that and thinking about when they're going to know what their mind is around that. So that will take a little bit of time, but that's okay. They'll come back to us.
Okay, so Peter, you and Ken are working on the index.
Correct. We're going to lead on that.
You're
But
gonna
we'll
lead on
be
the
keeping
index.
you guys apprised, because as we, get a summary, as we get a paragraph on each item, we'll circulate so that you see the paragraph. You can remember, oh, did I read this or did I not read this? You could think about going into the SharePoint and reading it if you feel like you need a refresher.
Right, because we would need that in order to do the next two items.
Right. That's right.
There's the start of that in SharePoint already. I sent you the link. It dates back to 2019. You're listed as the author of that.
Okay. You-
So you have a starting point there at least.
Was the link, okay, you sent it out?
You sent out a link to a starting point of an index?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Great. So we have the start of an index. We will use that link. We'll pull that up. We will be bringing that up to 2024 and making sure we have everything in it and beginning the process of committee discussion about what we think is missing. Okay, so
Motion is
motion's on the table.
made, seconded. Any more
Seconded. All in
discussion?
favor?
No discussion.
Well, more discussion if you need it. Everybody seems to be in favor of it already. So I think that we have adopted a course of action here. And I think Jessica and between Jessica and Andrew, I think we have it precisely on paper. Okay, so now that we've come to that conclusion, and Pam and Anita, I'm going to ask you to hold for a moment just because I want to quickly go through a couple of things. So we do have a part of the board level discussion was, as long as we have this RFP process moving, we could also move forward with our nearshore testing and that Suffolk County Health Department testing. Joe, have you had any further input from Stephen Kiley? Do we have the legal information that we need to post so that we're not liable when we do this?
Yes, well, we're making progress on that, and we now have a framework for how we're going to initiate the program. And I believe by next month's meetings, we'll have the paperwork ironed out.
Okay, so we'll have legal, we'll have the town ready to, put that on the website after our next meeting, that we, that there's
Right.
a process of making it available for people to get it reimbursed for their private well tests if they agree ahead of time to share their data with the town,
Yes.
with us. Specific with all its specifics, its address,
I did talk to Jason Heim,
Mm-hmm.
because that was one of the questions that I was going to follow up on. We were going to, I asked him how to collate this information because we were looking for that. How do we, and he said, you can use just an Excel spreadsheet. And I can FOIA their spreadsheet that they have of
Right.
the tests
Right,
they've
we'll be able to
already
get it in
done.
spreadsheet format. We don't have to data enter it.
What's that?
You're confirming something that I also picked up in conversation with Joe, which is that Suffolk County Health Department will be able to give us this information in
Right.
their spreadsheet. So
That's
that we
right.
don't have to enter it into a spreadsheet.
Right. So that was what I got from Joe, from Jason Heim. And he also said that the rebate, which we kind of already have established, is the best way of working it out. People who get reimbursed or get a rebate.
Mhm. He was in favor of that
Easier.
approach.
Okay, I'm just clarifying that because I did speak with him about it.
Okay, all right. So, and you know, it's again, nothing has changed here. We're prioritizing initially the two nearshore area, the two peninsular areas. Although, you know, from our discussion, perhaps at some point we'll come back to, you know, further more testing in the center, full panel testing in the center. But for right now, it's just as we said, Silver Beach and Menantic Peninsula are the initial areas. Other people can sign up, but we want to get a density of tests in those two areas so that it's useful information about saltwater intrusion, as well as full characterization of what people are pulling up in their wells.
So when are we starting this?
So it sounds like next month we'll have everything we need to put that onto the web and to reach out to the two homeowner communities and say, begin to get your people together. Joe had mentioned to me that he thought that it was best if the tests actually happen closer to the summer so that we get good saltwater intrusion information in the period of heavy draw. So there's a little bit of time for the homeowners associations to put this together and to get 100 volunteers or 50 volunteers or whatever it's going to be in their neighborhood who are willing to share their data and, you know, will be reimbursed. But I think that we should be up on the website with, you know, here's what you know, with all the public information for how to submit your test, how to submit the request to be reimbursed, et cetera.
And who's going to do that?
So legal is coming back from Stephen Kiley, obviously. So we'll have our boilerplate on that. Christina will put it up on the website. At our next meeting, we can discuss, you know, any precise how you want to format it on the web. But we have a process. We have, you know, you send in a letter or whatever, you send in an email to this address saying, I would like to be part of this program and be reimbursed. And I am willing to share my data.
Yeah,
So next month, we are going
Peter?
to be looking at
Excuse me.
the text of that. Yeah, Doug.
Just in your conversations with Stephen, not everyone, certainly in Silver Beach, is on email. So this will also need to go out by mail. And people need to be able to respond by mail. Sorry, but that's the reality. So people will not be able to look at a website, et cetera.
We'd follow the same protocols that we did for the center testing.
I'm afraid so.
I think so. Well, the only way to get to everybody.
So the dog was barking in the background for me. I apologize. I might have missed a word or two that you said, Doug. If you could just very, very briefly state it again.
We'll need to send these out by mail because not everyone in my community has internet.
But we would be asking the homeowners association to mail.
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely, we can do that.
We're not going to do that. The homeowners association will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but you have time because again, we don't really want the tests. We would like the tests to be clustered around the summer season. You have the time to establish that. Okay, great. So now, I mean, unless people feel more need to discuss that, we're now kind of up to date on the nearshore testing procedures. Doug, could I ask you if we could move on to just what happened at the reporters meeting?
Yes.
The Shelter Island reporters meeting. Just a very, very brief recap of the Peconic fisheries discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just grabbing my notes. So it was, there were basically 4 speakers. There was someone from Cornell, there was an oysterman, there was a fisherman, and there was a chef. So all of those folks offered their perspective on the health and how to make the fishery work better. Cornell was talking about, first of all, a feasibility study for seafood processing on Long Island in order to help the fishermen. as well as seeking to introduce a new scallop that has DNA strains that are resistant to the parasite. Apparently, they've discovered that it was a parasite that was causing the die-off. We heard from a oyster farmer who had the most interesting comment, quote, "We know that the water in West Neck is not healthy," end quote, due to its muddy bottom and warm temperatures, which, at least in my understanding, is at odds with what we've heard from Kate Rossi Snook about the Back to the Bays initiative and their intention to plant oysters in West Neck Bay. And basically what this person said was only Cockles Harbor really is viable. The fisherman gave a really detailed description of what his day is like and all of the work that's involved, as well as it's not just the fishing and the packing, but there's a lot of paperwork that this guy fills out every day, which adds to the length of what is already a very long day. And the fisherman, the chef was talking about how basically he gets his fish from the Fulton Fish Market, even though it may be caught out here. That the way the distribution channels work, it all goes back to one of these large markets, and from there he picks it up and then apparently then comes back out. But they don't have a system, as he said, like they have in Europe, where you can just buy it off the dock and take it to a restaurant. So that's the summary. It was a well-attended meeting.
Okay, I believe that that Kate Rossi Snook was looking at Menantic Creek, not West Neck Creek, for an additional, and I think that, you know, it behooves us to be staying in touch with her about that project, that particular Back to the Bays project. And, you know, I think I'd like to hear from her about her thoughts about the feasibility of her reseeding efforts in Menantic Creek. We don't have to discuss it at length right now, but thank you for, you know, kind of filling us in on that. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, there was one other item that we just need to get to, which is our 2025 meeting dates. Jessica distributed them to all of you. You should be looking at them. I don't know if any of you know. I mean, my schedule is, I can't tell you. I'm sure it's fine. I make every meeting, and it's fine by me. But we should be aware, and if we need to have if we know that there's a date that's bad, we should just be getting back. Okay, so everybody's aware of the 2025 meeting dates. On old business, I obviously was delayed for a week or two here for family business, but I will in fact return to the irrigation subcommittee. So that's old business for me. Other old business that needs mentioning? Okay, or anything new business that people want to introduce at this point? Make sure that we have for an upcoming meeting. Okay, so we're through our agenda. Let me just turn to Pam. Pam, it's almost 4 o'clock, but if you have a brief comment that should be made.
Yeah, I actually just have one request, Peter. You keep on talking about the USGS study that was done for Long Island in 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't seem to locate that. If you could.
Well, we'll
put on
include
the
that in the
website.
index for sure.
Yeah, or can you just or even just email it to me, just the link? I'd like to see it. I know it was just a Long Island study and it wasn't specific to Shelter Island, but Shelter Island is.
Yeah, I did forward it to Sean. I forget. I think I forwarded. I'll forward you the link. The USGS has it posted online. I will forward you the link directly. Could you actually make that request in email to me, Peter P. Grand at shelterislandtown.
Yeah, sure.
That
Yeah,
way I'll just reply directly to you with the link to it. Absolutely, you should have it.
Yeah, I just think, that's probably the most recent thing that we have of any studies that have done on Shelter Island. I mean, I've been doing the same thing as
It's not a
you.
study. Bear in mind that it is a full mathematical, it's a mod flow, it's a computer model. So it's a full model of, right, okay.
Right, no, I understand that. No, I
What was
think
the year on that, 2021?
2021, so to me, that's like the most recent data on that information, which I think is, which is really what I think you all should strive for. And I do
Yeah,
appreciate that you put the Voorhees study online to take a look at,
yeah,
and it's going to take some time to get all these studies together and figure out what we do know
Absolutely.
about water on the island. And I really appreciate your efforts today. I really thank you very much.
thank you, Pam.
Have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you
Thank you.
guys again. Until then.
Yeah. All right, and if there isn't any other questions in the, either from the committee members or from the people. Anita, I know you had your hand up at a moment.
No, I'll hold my comment. My only hope is that you'll clarify what dates the previous testing would be allowable when you make the procedures.
The earliest testing for the Suffolk County Health Department testing on Monantic.
What I mean is, some people have already had tests
Oh,
done, and, do you want them from 5 years back or 1 year
Right.
back? What would be appropriate to get a picture of the island right now?
and I personally can't, more information is more information, longitudinal information to my eye is good. I can't imagine any reason why we would reject anybody's test from any year.
Okay,
Personally, again, that was,
Okay.
the board, the committee didn't tell you that, but that's my immediate.
I would suggest that we would we'd be open to receiving any test for whatever date it was. And then the rebate would be available to those who are within the window of the Suffolk County's eligibility. So if you happen to do it in May and this became live in June and you wouldn't be eligible again for the county test. So we would sort of accept the May results in lieu of a new test in June because the applicant couldn't reapply. I think there's a 12-month window on the eligibility, or whatever that window is. That'd be my recommendation for the
Okay.
for the program.
And since we want to come out of the next meeting with this as a, something that we can put on the website between meetings, let's you and I, Joe, just review, the program, what its rules will be so that the rules are clear. I like the idea of the 12-month you're allowed to submit from the last 12 months prior to when we start the current testing. You could submit with a rebate. But anyway, we'll refine that and put it to the committee for a final vote of approval. All right, and with all of that, and at 2 minutes past 4, motion to adjourn. Okay, all in favor?
Thanksgiving.
Everybody, yeah, have a great day.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta run quick.